Chapter 764. Are you leaving later today? Shui Yaoyao tilted her head towards Feng Shang. Feng Shang stuttered, nodding his head. No one knew how many times they had trained together after losing the semifinals. What was worth celebrating was that his efforts were finally starting to show results. When he turned around, Yin Guiyao leaned against the door frame, a cigarette dangling from his lips. You're playing in an internet cafe? I can stay till 9. Shui Yaoyao reported the time. Feng Shang refused to back down. I can stay at Uncle's place. Cough. Yin Guiyao choked. You don't have to stay. Feng Shang was stubborn. Why? Yin Guiyao. Would I say I'm afraid of being misunderstood as gay? You're still young, you can all go home. Yin Guiyao flicked his cigarette. Just remember what you want to achieve. Time always passed very quickly during training. Yin Guiyao was a veteran and he knew that while they were researching the other teams, they were also researching them. It wasn't just the esports industry, even ordinary gamers knew that there would be an international competition after the National League. At this moment, the Japanese, who were hailed as the godly team, were trying to calm down the commotion caused by their members the day before. What did I say? The manager pressed his forehead. Don't go out, don't go out. Watanabe sat across from him in a carefree manner. He was still handsome. Well, nothing happened, right? That's because Vice Captain is around. The abandoned doll-faced man was still fuming, pointing at the OK sticker on his face. Look at what you did to me. Watanabe coughed in embarrassment. Shouldn't you introduce the team? China's National League is just around the corner, isn't it? Hearing this, the manager suppressed his anger. His finger pressed the mouse beside him and clicked. Our old rival, Xiangnan, I believe you are familiar with them. This time, their fighting strength has improved. Before the manager could finish, Watanabe interrupted him. I've seen Xiangnan, let's take a look at Supreme Alliance. Supreme Alliance? Which team was that? The Japanese were confused. They glanced at the information and found the word Supreme Alliance at the end. This team? The person who was sitting on the balcony suddenly jumped down with a smile on his face. He looked very feminine and even his hair was long. However, he was obviously a man and yet he was so beautiful. Apart from Lin Feng didn't expect there to be another person. Furthermore, his demonic aura was a little more intense. Is there anything worthy of your attention? Or, Hoshino, did you bring them to watch the revival match because of Supreme Alliance? Don't disturb me. Hoshino pushed her away. Ayayaya, is this how you treat me, the captain? That's right, the bewitching man was the captain of the Japanese team, Yusishin. Hoshino tilted his head, changed his position, and continued to sleep. Yusishin didn't make a fuss, he propped up the side of his face. Seems like it's true. Let's take a look at Supreme Alliance and see what's so special about them that my vice captain has to come personally and cause trouble for 2 kids. The troublemaker, Watanabe, shrunk his neck. Their captain was beautiful, but she wasn't someone to be trifled with. The agent changed the video material. But Supreme Alliance had been silent for a long time. Therefore, the information on the battle was not very complete. Chapter 765. Even though they are good, I feel that Xiangnan is cooler. The youth pointed at the video. For example, this person's technique looks impressive, but Watanabe mentioned that he would be able to resolve it. The person the baby-faced man was referring to was none other than Qin Mo, an immature team. Yusishin arched his brow. He is quite handsome. Does their team choose their members based on looks like ours? He was asking Hoshino. Hoshino couldn't be bothered with him. The youth looked as though he had suffered a huge blow. Based on looks? Not based on ability? How is that possible? Don't worry, you aren't in the range of looks. Watanabe reached out and patted the youth's shoulder. You aren't that good looking after all. The youth. F***ck, he really wanted to kill his teammates recently. But. Yu Cixin stood up. He looked like a king when he looked down from above in his uniform. We'll worry about them when they defeat Xiangnan. His captain was implying that Supreme Alliance couldn't defeat Xiangnan. Captain, do you think they are too weak? Yu Cixin laughed. How is that possible? The most handsome one is amazing. Ayaya, it would be great if we could poach him over. The youth, a newcomer like the youth, probably didn't understand Yu Cixin's words. But Hoshino could understand it. Supreme Alliance. A portion of the members were too weak. During the revival match, they realized that they couldn't come out. During the National League, this would be the most fatal. The sunlight dimmed slowly. He was an esports professional player. Especially as the vice-captain of a team. The only person who fell asleep while watching a professional battle was the youngster beside him. Qin Mo glanced over at the youngster whose head was on his shoulder. He removed the notebook and pressed his hand on the man's head. Her silver hair was soft, and when it slid through his fingers, it was easy to like the feeling. Bo Jiu woke up immediately. She rubbed her eyes with her fists. Do you want to drink water? Or do you want to eat? Or go to the toilet? I'm going to the toilet. Can you help me take off my pants? Qin Mo asked slowly. Bo Jiu's sleepiness disappeared instantly. How could the Almighty be so bad? When they were young, he would hug her and shake his adorable little head, telling her that he wasn't going anywhere. Her canine pet had changed. So cunning, black-bellied, and venomous, but Qin Mo didn't go anywhere. It felt good to touch the youth. The Almighty must have made a mistake. She should be the one caressing his head. Whose pet was he? Seeing that the other party was sick and that his illness was related to her, she decided to let him go. Bo Jiu didn't say anything since it felt good to be touched. Qin Mo smiled faintly. Bring me a book. Novels? Bo Jiu found it a good way to pass the time. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. Poetry collection. After all, I'm not like a certain someone who can't understand overbearing CEO falls in love with me, my little surrogate wife, and sugar daddy, come and feed me. Can't this joke pass? She didn't read those books either. Bo Jiu jumped up, looking suave even when she got off the bed. Qin Mo watched as the youngster was sent away. He glanced over at the phone that had been vibrating. Chapter 766. It was impossible for Bo Jiu not to notice him fiddling with his phone. After all, she was more familiar with the sound of any electronic device than anyone else. But she felt that she had to leave some dignity for her sick pet. It was better to act as though she didn't know anything. Besides, the only thing the Almighty was avoiding her to talk about was the crime squad. Bo Jiu had her own ways of investigating people. For the time being, she didn't need to use any tricks to get information from the Almighty. Hence, after the notification disappeared, Bo Jiu casually picked up a book. Actually, the Almighty's bookshelf was filled with criminal psychology books and financial books. It wasn't easy to find anything else. Qin Mo placed his phone down, glancing at the book in the youngster's hands. You like this? It's all right. Bo Jiu didn't know the content. She just didn't want a certain someone to keep sending messages. That would make her hands itchy. Qin Mo chuckled. Pass me the book. Bo Jiu was obedient at this moment. She sat down and handed the book over, wondering if she should take one out for a look. Or play hero on her phone. Unexpectedly, she didn't manage to do either. Just then, she heard the flipping of pages. Then came the low voice beside her ears. Qin Mo's natural low voice was especially alluring today, carrying a unique quality. I still like you, walking 8,000 miles with the wind, never asking when you will return. When these words rang out, Bo Jiu glanced up instinctively. That was when she realized that the Almighty was reading the book in front of him. His voice was so pleasant to the ears. Bojo didn't interrupt, her eyes turning towards the flipped piece of paper. The low voice beside her ears was still there. I still like you, like an old city gate waiting for an old friend, standing alone. Her hands were indeed itchy. She watched as the person leaned against him, reading the poem. Bojo didn't know how many times she had told herself. Kidnapping this person would definitely be troublesome. But she still wanted to kidnap him. Bojo lowered her head as she thought about her plan. She didn't notice the warmth in Chin Mo's deep eyes when she lowered her head. When a certain someone stayed by his side obediently and read with him, she was indeed likable. This fellow was still the same as before, liking to stay by his side and listen to his stories. Wait a minute, why did he say it was the same as before? Chin Mo's thick brows furrowed, followed by an intense pain. The bone-piercing pain was simply unbearable. The book in his hand fell to the ground. The first thing Bojo did was press down on his head, panic written all over her eyes. Aunt Zhang, Aunt Zhang. Chin Mo reached out and held onto the youngster's wrist, his forehead covered in sweat. I'm fine. Bojo was still worried. She had never felt that she was clumsy, but at this moment, she felt that she couldn't do anything right. Is the temperature rising again? He touched it with the back of his hand and found that there was indeed a little. Chin Mo pressed down on her hand. His head wasn't hurting as much anymore, but there was one thing he was sure of. He needed to do a brain checkup. Chin Mo knew that this headache had nothing to do with his flu. It was the same last time. It suddenly hurt. Perhaps not all of a sudden. Chapter 767. Bojo noticed the Almighty's gaze and assumed he was still in pain. Hence, she started to massage his head gently. Some people. They were born with the dark side. But even so, in front of a certain person, they would retract all their thoughts. To Bojo, Chin Mo was that certain person. Childhood companionship was important. No one could explain it clearly. Madame Zhang heard the commotion and hurried over. Young Master Zhou, what's wrong? Brother Amo has a headache, could I trouble Madame Zhang to make a call? The Chin family should have a private doctor. Bojo didn't give Chin Mo a chance to speak. Madame Zhang didn't either. Her decision was the same as young Master Zhou's. At this moment, Chin Mo found it interesting. Why did this guy raise him like a glass doll? Because of their posture. Chin Mo reached out and held onto her waist. He did the same. Bojo was busy massaging the Almighty's head and didn't notice his actions at all. In Bojo's heart, she had always been the one taking advantage of the Almighty. It wasn't easy to change such a mindset. The private doctor came quickly since Chin Mo was already running a high fever. But there was something he was puzzled about. In the past, when young Master Chin had fainted from the fever, he hadn't said he wasn't feeling well. When it was extremely uncomfortable, he would just allow the doctor to insert needles and close his eyes to rest. Why did young Master Chin always say he wasn't feeling well? His fever was almost gone. When the private doctor heard the diagnosis, he suspected that there was something wrong with his medical skills. He glanced up, wanting to ask something. But just then, he met young Master Chin's warning gaze. He glanced at the good-looking youngster beside him, who was looking at him anxiously. Then he turned to young Master Chin, who had recovered but insisted that he wasn't feeling well. The private doctor understood very well what this meant. He coughed softly. Bojo watched as he kept the stethoscope and smiled faintly. Doctor, how is Brother Amo? The fever is gone, but young Master Chin is still very weak. When saying this, the private doctor's face didn't change, but he still felt guilty. I'm afraid that he will get worse tonight, and he needs someone to accompany him at all times. It's best to take his temperature every hour and give him a head massage when necessary. Bao Jiu listened attentively and memorized almost everything he needed to remember. All right. The private doctor glanced at the person lying on the bed again. After receiving the hint, he added, it's best if someone can keep watch at night. Usually, viral colds get worse at night. Is that so? Do we need to continue the drip for Brother Mo? Bojo arched a brow. The private doctor hurriedly said, "There's no need for that. Now that young Master Chin was full of energy, what else would he need to inject within 4 drip? Do I need to take any medicine?" The private doctor wanted to say that there was no need. The person behind the youngster nodded. Only then did the doctor change his tone. "Yes, the medicine is below. I'll give it to Aunt Zhang later." "All right." Bojo got the answer she wanted. She tossed the doctor aside and pulled the blanket over him. The private doctor had never seen anyone take care of young Master Chin like this. He really wanted to wipe his sweat. But he didn't dare to do anything. Young Master Chin's gaze was clearly saying, "Hurry up and leave." The private doctor immediately took his leave and disappeared very quickly. After all, even he felt that his young master was too shameless. Chapter 768. Bojo used a never-before-seen patience to take care of Chin Mo. Honestly, she wasn't someone who knew how to take care of others. But this time, she knew to adjust the pillow for him. Of course, there was also his temperature. Bojo felt that it wasn't easy to take his temperature. She had to suppress her urge to take advantage of him. That wasn't good. But on second thought, it was rare to see the Almighty so weak. He was a sickly beauty in white pajamas with black hair and a poetry book in his hands. She would take advantage of him. Chin Mo lifted his lids, looking at a certain someone who had taken advantage of him and was smiling. He couldn't help but laugh. What was wrong with her? "What are you laughing at?" Bojo tilted her head. Chin Mo arched a brow. "I'm laughing." "Of course, are you laughing because of my handsomeness?" Bojo passed him another book. Sometimes, listening to the Almighty read was a form of enjoyment. Since he was a criminal psychologist, he would definitely know what tone to use to read the words. It would be easier to move a person's heart. With the Almighty's skills, he would be able to become famous quickly if he was a CV. But, with that thought, Bojo realized a problem. The person sitting in front of her. Did he even know how to hypnotize people? Chin Mo flipped open the book in his hands, his voice casual. "Tell me about your childhood." "Childhood?" Bojo glanced over, pushing her bangs to the back of her head. "I loved fighting." She wasn't sure why the Almighty was asking about her childhood. But she knew it was probably to test her. The Almighty had been investigating her. He only started from the Fu family. They couldn't find anything. Bojo was sure of that. But the rest, unless the Almighty had found something else. Bojo was still smiling. It was a habit. "Brother Mo, what about when you were young?" She really wanted to hear what her canine pet thought of her. They started talking about such topics. It wasn't within her expectations, but it wasn't bad. Reading at home. Chin Mo's voice was calm. "Sometimes, I would join the armed forces." Bojo listened to his activities, a phrase appearing in her mind. A real warlord's son. But, what else? The Almighty hadn't mentioned her. He had to get the whole thing out of her. Chin Mo closed the book in his hands. "Nothing else." "Nothing else?" Bojo stilled. How could there be nothing else? Chin Mo noticed that the person in front of him kept looking at him. He arched a brow. "What's wrong?" "No." Should he say that he was disappointed? That shouldn't be the case. But he couldn't explain it clearly. This doesn't seem right. But why weren't there any others? When Bojo lowered her lids, she smiled and continued, "I thought someone like Brother Mo would have been to many places when he was young since he is of mixed blood." "No." Chin Mo replied instinctively. Then he glanced up. "Perhaps I have, but I can't remember." What did forget mean? Bojo glanced at him. Chin Mo glanced over. Grandfather said he brought me to America, but I have no recollection of it. It's the same with other things, I lost a period of memory. Bojo hadn't expected such an answer. He had never seen anyone so calm when they said that they had amnesia. Chapter 769. The personal doctor you saw just now would occasionally check on my mental state. Chin Mo chuckled with a hint of mischief in his voice. Do you think my mental fortitude is better or his mental fortitude is better? Bojo understood. The Almighty had never been cured. Based on his battle experience, he was confident. The Almighty had never tested anyone's mental state in front of her before. But everything had to do with the fact that he had washed his hands. Bojo hadn't forgotten. Who had caused her such a huge loss? Hence, a normal psychologist wouldn't be able to deal with the Almighty. Did that mean the amnesia was selective? Fortunately, it's just my childhood. Also, why was his hand injured so badly? What was with the water covering his head? Chin Mo glanced down at his hand, his gaze sinking. Bojo wanted to say, but you had me when you were young. But she thought about it. She lifted her head and drank the water in her hand. Then a faint smile. It had started from the day she had left. Her father had told her. It was best to forget about her pet. It was a form of protection. But, Bojo narrowed her eyes. No one would lose their memory for no reason. Especially when it was selective. Bojo wanted to know what exactly had happened to the Almighty for her pet to forget himself. But there was a benefit. He couldn't remember. She didn't have to worry about the Almighty guessing her identity and could speak casually. Bojo chuckled. It was interesting when I was young. I met an extremely beautiful little boy, but his eyes were so big that they were on top of his head and he looked at everyone as though they were germs. In the end, he couldn't defeat me and became my pet. He must have been afraid of the dark, otherwise, he would have chased me away when I went to disturb him at night. He wouldn't have given me half of his bed every time. More importantly, he was comfortable to hug, but he always refused to let me hug him. Don't you think he was too shy? Chin Mo's voice turned cold. Who is the little boy you are talking about? Your idol, Hoshino? Bojo hadn't expected the Almighty to misunderstand and felt as though she had dug a hole for herself. No. It's best if he's not. This kind of boy who has been lying since he was young and slept with him must be very cunning. If you see this kind of person in the future, stay away from him, understand? As soon as Chin Mo finished speaking, the young man smiled. For some reason, she looked especially happy and nodded vigorously in agreement with his argument. Seeing that the effect was good, Chin Mo thought about it and decided to blacken his childhood love rival to the end. People with eyes on the top of their heads are probably too arrogant. Why do you want to be friends with them? So Brother Mo doesn't like him? I think he's rather cute. It was interesting to hear the Almighty ridiculing himself. Bojo cupped her cheek with one hand, her eyes narrowing into slits. Chin Mo scanned the youngster. Cute? Heh, it's more like it's just a facade. Great God, I hope you've recovered your memory and remember what you're saying now. Bojo couldn't take it anymore. She tilted her head and couldn't help but laugh. Only when he laughed. She still hadn't forgotten the most important thing. Who had caused her pet to become like this? Chapter 770. Time trickled by slowly. Everyone knew that the National League was coming. As long as the contestants could pass the exams, it didn't matter if they missed out on classes. Hence, that day, Bojo didn't go anywhere. She stayed at the Chin family's main house. No one knew, or rather, no one would deliberately think about where the young master of the Fu family was born. Even He Honghua had long thrown this matter to the back of her mind. After all, in her memory, the county hospital was still a small hospital. 17 years could change many things. In fact, even the floors had changed quite a bit. The address of the county hospital had also changed. No one could find that place. He Honghua didn't realize a problem. Hospitals in towns and villages were usually run by the state. For hospitals run by the state, the files would follow the change of address. However, it was indeed a waste of time and manpower to search for it. It wasn't easy for Wu Zhen and Su Mei to find He Honghua's name from the 4 months of files. Wu Zhen was smart and knew that it was a waste of manpower. She offered a high price and found some people to search with her. The director felt that it wasn't appropriate. But they were from the police. Besides, these weren't confidential documents. They were just born at a time and didn't say much. She let almost 10 people in. These people were quite happy. After all, such jobs were rare in the county. They could earn 500 yuan in a day's search. It wasn't a small sum. In the afternoon, the beautiful lady spoke again. The beautiful young lady spoke again. She said that it would be calculated by the piece. Whoever found it faster would get a raise in salary. This time, only the sound of paper flipping could be heard in the archives. Miss Wu is smart. Su Mei had always been clear of her position. Since she knew that Wu Zhen couldn't be provoked, she naturally went along with her. Wu Zhen glanced at her, flipping through the files in her hands. Let's see the results now. To Wu Zhen. Some things could only be solved by spending money. Moreover, it could indeed increase efficiency. This had always been her strength. She knew what the system was like. And she knew it in her heart. This time, Su Mei had found her. The secret she mentioned should be able to completely destroy that gay. If not, he wouldn't have the guts to offend the Qin family. Wait until she dug out the secret. It would also be able to dissipate the hatred in her heart. Su Mei's eyes were also shining. All she needed now was one piece of evidence to prove her conjecture. If it was really what she guessed. That little country bumpkin had lost all his reputation. The National League would also reconsider whether or not he was qualified to participate. After all, his identity as a boy was a huge scam. The more Su Mei thought about it, the faster her hands moved. She believed that in another day, they would be able to find the evidence. Tomorrow, they would hire more people. Soon, they would succeed. Wu Zhen thought so too. After all, no one could stop her from doing what she wanted to do. The hired workers were also thinking of ways to earn more money. But at this moment, for some reason, there was a commotion outside. The hospital director ran in, sweating profusely. Stop, stop. Chapter 771. The hospital director didn't speak. The temporary workers, who were still in a daze, saw a few people in camouflage uniforms rushing in. Even though they didn't have guns in their hands, no one dared to move in such a situation. The hospital director hurriedly went forward. The leader was a military officer. He looked at the director. Are you the person in charge here? Yes. The hospital director had never seen such a situation before. His heart was pounding. The military officer gestured and the rest walked forward, guarding the files. The higher-ups have given orders to find out how many newborns there are in the area. We will take over the information. Wu Zhen's eyes dimmed. Wu Zhen's eyes dimmed. It wasn't easy for her to find out. Why were the troops here? Su Mei was puzzled. What was going on? Miss Wu, what should we do now? She had been stabbed in the back by someone like that. What about the secret? Wu Zhen stood outside the door. Seeing her temporary workers being chased out, her face darkened. Her identity as a police officer was useless against the people in the army without negotiation from the higher-ups. These soldiers did not look like hospital directors, nor did they look like some of her colleagues. They were like a hard rock when it came to executing missions. They weren't affected by force or persuasion. If they didn't receive orders, the mission wouldn't end. It seemed like she had to use her connections. Wu Zhen glanced at the darkening sky. I'll make a call. Most of the Wu family's connections were in the city center. Almost all of the directors were inseparable from the Wu family. A county-level military unit like this. It would be easy to find the Jiang family. The aristocratic families had connections. Since the Wu family and the An family were aristocratic families, their relationship with the Jiang family wouldn't be too bad. Wu Zhen thought about it. There wouldn't be any important missions in such a small place. Moreover, it was related to the livelihood of the people. There was room for negotiation. If Jiang Zhua asked, it wouldn't be a problem for her to get the information of one or two people. After all, that person had a military rank on him. Jiang Zhua received Wu Zhen's call on his last day in the Jiang family. Even though Mother Shui had promised Shui Yaoyao to stay outside, she would still call her daughter home on such occasions. Regardless of what was going on outside, the family had to maintain the basic liveliness. This was what Mr. Jiang had always emphasized. It could be seen that Father Jiang was in a good mood because he did not expect that his son, who had always been at odds with him, would sit there and eat without saying anything. Even though his expression wasn't great, it was much better than when Mother Shui had first met him. Because of this impromptu family gathering, Shui Yaoyao's training didn't last till the end. But even Mother Shui could tell that her daughter had never worked so hard before. Looking at her face, which was no longer round, Shui Mining couldn't help but sigh. Mama Shui didn't dare to put food in Shui Yaoyao's bowl. He was afraid that he would agitate Jiang Zhuo again. He didn't want to see a loving mother and a filial son. Old Jiang also said that some things and some words should not be said in front of Jiang Zhuo. Brother Shui, who was sitting beside her, frowned when he saw Yaoyao. "Sis, did you lose weight?" As soon as he said that, Jiang Zhuo, who had been eating silently, put down his chopsticks and wiped the corners of his mouth with a napkin, his eyes fixed on Yaoyao. The atmosphere was a little tense. Brother Shui regretted what he had said. Shui Yaoyao, on the other hand, was much braver than before. After she finished the pork ribs, she lifted her head and smiled. There has been too much training recently, so everyone lost weight. It's normal. Chapter 772. Jiang Zhuo looked at her, placing the tissue down. Brother Shui heaved a sigh of relief. He admired his brother, but at the same time, he felt pressured. Shui Yaoyao had indeed lost weight. The clothes she used to wear were a little shaky. Even her battle uniform had been changed by Feng Yi. Every fat person who slimmed down would be a successful countervailing force. This sentence was indeed not wrong. Shui Yaoyao was originally very fair, but probably due to the exhaustion from training, she didn't wear her personal clothes. Instead, she wore a dashing uniform. To make it easier to play games, she changed her hairstyle. In the past, she used to let her hair down, the thick bangs making her look young. Now, she tied her hair into a high ponytail, her pure black hair complementing her beautiful eyes. Even Father Jiang smiled. Yaoyao has changed a lot, not bad, not bad. Mother Shui was gratified. She didn't come from a good background, but she understood the changes her daughter had undergone since she entered Supreme Alliance. Hence, even though she hadn't seen the Highness Zhou that her daughter had mentioned, deep down, she was grateful. Jiang Zhuo was also looking at Shui Yaoyao, but his eyes dimmed. Just as he was about to say something, Wu Zhen called. He frowned, then stood up, looking like he was going to answer the call. The Jiang father and son had always had a knot in their relationship. Father Jiang looked at Jiang Zhuo, sighing softly. Shui Yaoyao had finished her meal. She couldn't stand being in the Jiang family anymore. Since the main character had left, it wouldn't be rude for her to leave. If it had been in the past, Shui Yaoyao would have been disappointed to see Jiang Zhuo answer a girl's call. But now, most of her thoughts were on training. Shui Yaoyao thought it would probably be better in the future. She glanced at the time on her phone. If she went to the internet cafe at this hour, she should be able to play with the uncle. Since Feng Shang was staying in the internet cafe, she couldn't be left behind. But she hadn't expected Jiang Zhua to walk out to the courtyard to make a call. It was in the direction of the door. Shui Yaoyao wasn't someone who would eavesdrop. But he was smoking, his phone placed there, as though he had pressed the speaker button. He could clearly hear the person on the other end of the line saying, "Brother Mo has been deceived and isn't clear about young Master Fu's background. I'm currently investigating. Don't you want to know his secret?" According to his stepmother, that person didn't lie to Brother Mo just a little. "Even if you don't want to know, your sister can at least get some face from you. There are people from the military here. You can call them and ask them to show me the information. I won't take it away. How about that? Young master of the Fu family? Brother Mo? Secret? Deceive?" Shui Yaoyao froze when she heard these key words. The lie he mentioned, could it be? Shui Yaoyao didn't know where the courage came from, but she walked towards Jiang Zhua. She snatched Jiang Zhua's phone and hung up. She realized what she had done. When she lifted her lids, she met Jiang Zhua's beautiful chin. The man still had a cigarette in his mouth. When he looked at her, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. It was as if he was saying, "Are you crazy?" Chapter 773. Jiang Zhua had known Shui Yaoyao for a long time and naturally knew what she meant. "You're admitting that you took that photo to threaten me?" "Yes, I admit it." Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists tightly. "I'm despicable and shameless, but His Highness Zhou isn't. His Highness Zhou isn't like what Miss Wu said." Jiang Zhua suddenly laughed, the coldness in his eyes sending chills down her spine. "You gave up on threatening me because of someone else. That's infuriating. Shui Yaoyao, what would you do if I said I didn't agree? Would you run to your mom or dad and say that you seduced me? Those photos." Shui Yaoyao's face was pale as though all the life had been sucked out of her. Jiang Zhua walked towards her, his voice low. "I don't care, it's just a half-naked upper body, you can copy it however you want." Shui Yaoyao shuddered. She was useless, she couldn't protect the person she wanted to protect. That person told herself. Even an ordinary girl had the right to dream. If the secret was exposed, what would it be like? It wouldn't just be coke splashed on her. She recalled the first time that person failed. The silver hair that covered her eyes. The moment she looked at the game page, the moment of confusion, the bleeding fingers. No one cared. They only cared about winning or losing the game. There would even be people who would come out to despise the youngster, even if he was already covered in injuries. Jiang Zhua looked at Shui Yaoyao's expression. His eyes were cold. "You care so much about that kid from the Fu family? Let me see how much you care about him. I can choose not to help Wu Zhen, but you have to accompany me until I'm satisfied." Shui Yaoyao froze, looking at Jiang Zhua in disbelief. She wasn't a child anymore. She understood what he meant by, "Come and accompany me until I'm satisfied." Jiang Zhua held a cigarette. "Why? You can't do it? Don't force yourself if you can't." Shui Yaoyao watched as he took the phone from her palm and blurted out, "I can." Jiang Zhua's fingers froze. Shui Yaoyao glanced up. "As long as you don't help Wu Zhen deal with His Highness Zhou and don't tell Almighty Qin about what happened today, I can." Heh. Jiang Zhua took a deep puff of his cigarette to suppress the unknown stuffiness in his heart. This is the rhythm of being an escort for the youngster he loves. Shui Yaoyao had always known how nasty Jiang Zhua's words were to people he hated. But, this time, she did not dodge. "You're the one who made the request. I thought you would hate me. After all, you've always said that I'm dirty. I didn't expect you to make such a request." Jiang Zhua's smile turned colder. "Shui Yaoyao, do you think I won't take revenge on you for sleeping with me? I asked you to accompany me just to get back at you." "I know." How could he not know? Otherwise, it would be too difficult to explain why he made such a request. Shui Yaoyao thought that since it was a deal, There must be a time limit. When will you finish your revenge? Jiang Zhua extinguished the cigarette. Depends on my mood. Chapter 774. I'll use a year's time to make amends. After a year, I hope that you can find your own happiness and forget all the despicable things I've done. I won't appear in front of you again. Is that okay? Jiang Zhua clenched his fists, leaning over forcefully. He dragged Shui Yaoyao to the darkest corner of the yard and pressed her against the wall. Then he smiled like a playboy. My interest in revenge won't last for a year. You overestimate yourself, heh? I know, but there are some things that we have to make clear in advance. It's good for both of us. Shui Yaoyao took out her phone and opened the photo album in front of him. She found a photo of a sleeping beauty and quickly deleted it. Jiang Zhua watched her actions, the light in his eyes dimming. Fortunately, he was rational. Otherwise, he would have shouted for her to stop. That was crazy. He had never liked to threaten others. But this time, he didn't know what was going on. She probably wanted to take revenge. Sometimes, he really wanted to ask her. Didn't she say that the photo was important to her and that she just wanted to keep it to remind herself that she liked him? But now, she deleted the photo for someone. Important? Actually, it wasn't important at all. Or had she found someone more important than him? For example, Spade Z, Jiang Zhua thought she had a chance to get close to that kid. With Qin Mo around. That kid was like a prey that had already been marked. It was just a matter of time before anyone could escape from Qin Mo's hands. He had never thought of agreeing to Wu Zhen. He didn't like to abuse his privacy. Or was he the same as those people in her eyes? Jiang Zhua lowered his head, looking at the empty photo album with an indescribable frustration. Shui Yaoyao saw his expression and thought he was still worried. I don't have a computer and I can show you my email. There are no backups. I know I'm not trustworthy in front of you. You can take your time to test me. Does your Highness Jiao know about such a huge sacrifice? Jiang Zhua laughed again, but this time, his fringe covered his face. Shui Yaoyao's gaze froze. She doesn't need to know. But she had to tell her Highness Jiao that Wu Zhen was investigating. How touching. The last trace of warmth in Jiang Zhua's eyes was sucked away. He suddenly bent over and bit Yao Yao's lips. The scent that belonged to a man poured in at once. At that moment, Shui Yaoyao's mind went blank. When she looked at him again, she realized that the vengeance had begun. Far away in the county hospital, Wu Zhen looked at her phone that had been hung up. When he called again, the other side didn't even pick up. Even the look in his eyes changed. She clutched her phone tightly in her hand. What was going on with Jiang Zhua? Su Mei saw that she could not get through and knew that something was wrong. She said, Young Master Zhang's phone is not working. Miss Wu, you can try to find someone else. The rank of the troops stationed in the county should be very low. It could be your friend or old Wu's friend. Wu Zhen had wanted to get Jiang Zhua to do it quickly since the Jiang family's military power was second only to the Qin family. But Su Mei was right. There was no need to hire a broadsword for such a small place. After thinking it through, Wu Zhen dialed her grandfather's number. Chapter 775. He instructed Wu Zhen to pass the phone to the officer in charge. Wu Zhen could tell from his aura that there wouldn't be a problem. Unexpectedly, the officer answered the call, but said to the other party, This matter is not under your jurisdiction. You have no right to ask. The officer turned to Wu Zhen. Niece, your case is a little complicated. It should be the military investigating something. The other party isn't an ordinary soldier, you should come back. He was trying to persuade her. But Wu Zhen wasn't going to listen. She felt that his rank was too low. He was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. He couldn't even manage a small city. Wu Zhen tried to think of a solution. The leading officer swept her a glance. He took out his phone and sent a message. Young master, all the information has been sealed. I've asked the hospital director and Wu Zhen and Su Mei are looking for young master Zhou's birth file. Once we find it, I'll seal it and send it to you. However, Wu Zhen is currently looking for someone and a military commander just called. Should I reveal my identity to ensure the operation continues? When Qin Mo received the message, a certain someone was checking his temperature. Bo Jiu heard the phone ringing. When she unbuttoned his shirt, she arched a brow. Aren't you going to look? I'll check your temperature first. Qin Mo replied calmly. The intelligent Bo Jiu quickly realized that it wasn't convenient for the Almighty to look at the message in her presence. Hence, she found an excuse to go downstairs since the Almighty would only be so guarded against her when he was investigating a case. At times, she was rather understanding. Bo Jiu picked an apple and bit into it, intending to give the Almighty some space to investigate. But that wasn't the case. She would never have expected Qin Mo to be investigating the birth of this body. Qin Mo turned on his phone. While the youngster wasn't around, he made a call. The Special Forces soldier picked up immediately. Young master. Don't reveal your identity, look for the file personally. Once you find it, don't look at it. As for the rest, let her cause trouble. Qin Mo's voice was calm. After she causes trouble, uproot her connections and the Wu family. If the Wu family wants to interfere with the military, they will be punished according to military law. Yes. The Special Forces soldier couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. Young master's methods were still the same as before. It was really a sharp blade that could not see blood. Everyone knew that if he were to reveal his identity now, Wu Zhen wouldn't look for anyone else. I will also settle down. But he did not want to be exposed. With Miss Wu's temperament, she would probably break more and more rules. At that time, he would make his move. Indeed, even old Master Wu could not get her out of there. Of course, if she didn't make a fuss, everything might have turned around. Therefore, this was the cycle of karma. Wu Zhen never believed in karma and only believed in power. In the face of money and power, who wouldn't give in? She threw money around, and someone would help her. Similarly, as long as she used her power, she would be able to make those soldiers who stood in her way return to the army. What she didn't expect was that when she asked the officer to answer the phone for the second time, the officer raised his eyebrows and said a few words to the other side of the phone before hanging up. Then, he added, Miss Wu is suspected of bribery and obstructing our department from carrying out its mission. If there's any problem, we'll discuss it in court. Chapter 776. The military had always been swift in their execution. The moment he finished his sentence, someone pressed down on Wu Zhen's hand. Wu Zhen had never been treated in such a manner. In the past, she had been the one arresting others. Who could arrest her? She was the sole heir of the Wu family. Do you know who I am? How dare you send me to the military court? Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, her voice turning cold. I'm here to investigate a case. Since when did the military have the right to arrest a police officer? If you aren't clear about your duties, call your regiment commander. You won't be able to bear the consequences of offending someone you can't afford to offend. The soldier swept her a glance, his tone indifferent. Miss Wu, you don't have to worry. What consequences can there be for me to carry out my duties? Instead, after being fired, you refused to hand over your badge and obstructed the military's mission. You even found a bunch of people to make me answer the phone. As a businessman, when can the Wu family command the military? Or does Miss Wu think it's fine for you to abuse your power with your family's power? Wu Zhen lifted her lids. You're from the crime squad? Did Director Huang ask you to come? She hadn't thought about Qin Mo. Because Wu Zhen felt that she had done it without anyone knowing. Unless it was someone from the crime squad who had been trying to push her out, that was why they came up with such an excuse. She knew Fatty Huang didn't like her. Her grandfather had said that if Fatty Huang made her leave the crime squad, he would definitely find a chance to get revenge for her. Hence, Fatty Huang bore a grudge against her. Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, scoffing coldly. I'm just here to investigate something. It has nothing to do with the crime squad. What right do you have to control me? The soldier watched her, wondering how she managed to get into the police academy. She was an insult to the profession. There's no need for the crime squad to control someone like you. Miss Wu, you've been pampered for too long. Have you forgotten that as an ordinary citizen, there's nothing you can and can't do? You've already been fired, yet you're still pretending to be a police officer. Miss Wu, do you think the Wu family will be able to bail you out? Don't worry, it won't happen again. Take her away. Wu Zhen clenched her fists at the last word. She wasn't done with the crime squad. Wu Zhen was brought to the military vehicle and Su Mei couldn't escape. Those who stayed behind continued to look through the files. All of a sudden, only the sound of paper flipping could be heard. Piles and piles of files were carried in and carried away. There were very few people who knew about this. One of the characteristics of the military was secrecy. The director of the hospital was not stupid. Of course, he would not do such a thing. What's more, he had heard enough. The people who came to find him at the beginning were no longer from the police. From the looks of it, he was making things convenient for someone who shouldn't be making things convenient, so he didn't dare to say anything else. With a bunch of soldiers standing in front of him, his legs went soft. But what exactly were these people investigating? He couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought about it. The night deepened. Qin family main family. The armed policemen were still standing outside. From the inside of the house, he could even see the sentries standing guard. There are so many armed policemen stationed here. Why aren't they giving people a chance to kidnap them? Bo Jiu placed one hand in her pocket, tossing the apple core into the bin as she muttered to herself. Madame Zhang thought Bo Jiu was looking at something. She tilted her head and glanced over. Then she smiled. Young Master Jiu, do you think the courtyard is too quiet at night? That's right. Bo Jiu lifted her lips, calm and composed. She didn't reveal her intention to kidnap them at all. Madame Zhang held a plate of freshly cut oranges in her hands. She must have seen Bo Jiu munching on the apple and couldn't help cutting a plate of oranges. She knew young Master Jiu had a big appetite. I think it's too quiet too. Fortunately, young Master Jiu is here. Madame Zhang couldn't help but smile as she spoke. Madame is rarely at home and boss is always in the army. Young Master usually eats alone, so there aren't many lively times at home. But it's different now that young Master Jiu is here. Young Master's appetite is obviously much bigger than before and he even smiles occasionally. Even though young Master doesn't say it, as a servant, I know that young Master likes young Master Jiu's presence. Even Madame is very grateful to young Master Jiu for accompanying young Master. After all, young Master's personality is indeed difficult to get along with, so I hope that young Master Jiu can be more forgiving in the future. Bo Jiu took the oranges from Madame Zhang's hands and smiled lightly. Madam, don't worry. I'm the kind of person who knows what I'm doing. I know how Brother Mo treats me. Similarly, how important that person was to her. She knew it clearly. There were many things. She didn't want to scheme anymore and she didn't want to be on guard anymore. If it had been someone else, she would have made sure nothing would go wrong. But that was Qin Mo. That was the Qin Mo who had accompanied her for 3 years and 2 months when she was young. That was the Qin Mo who wanted her to kidnap him and leave without a care for anything else. That wasn't someone else. Bo Jiu fiddled with one of the oranges. If she was destined to live in darkness for the rest of her life, she hoped that the lamp named Qin Mo couldn't be extinguished. Even if they became enemies one day. He was also the most important person to her and the person she couldn't bear to drag into the darkness to accompany her. Madame Zhang watched the gentle smile on the youngster's face and heaved a sigh of relief. After all, young master hadn't seemed happy when he had returned yesterday. I'll have to trouble young master Jiu to take care of young master today. Honestly, I was shocked when young master Jiu appeared in the morning. Speaking of which, young master Jiu, how exactly did you come in? I clearly remember that I locked all the doors. Bo Jiu touched the bridge of her nose. In order to maintain Madame Zhang's impression of her as an understanding person, she didn't want to tell her about climbing the wall. Bo Jiu changed to a more tactful way of saying, the back door wasn't locked. You must have forgotten, back door? Madame Zhang was still trying to recall. Bo Jiu had already carried the oranges upstairs. Hey, wait, young master Jiu, where's the back door? Of course, Bo Jiu wouldn't turn back. How was she going to explain? Besides, she had been plotting to kidnap the Almighty just a moment ago. If Madame Zhang found out about her thoughts, she would never dare to trouble her young master again. Bo Jiu didn't have free hands. She lifted her legs and bent her knees to push the door open. Qin Mo heard the commotion outside. He glanced up, replying leisurely, what is it? The wall-jumping scholar can't take it anymore and is about to be exposed? Bo Jiu thought to herself, what's the big deal about being a wall-jumping scholar? She placed the oranges down elegantly and reached for the 2 laptops. I won't be exposed for now. As long as there aren't any cameras outside, I'll be safe. Qin Mo watched the youngster, his lips lifting. Bo Jiu felt that his expression wasn't right. She paused. So, there are cameras? The Almighty's reply was to take the remote control and press the power button with a smile on his face. The internet-connected television was switched on. Bo Jiu couldn't possibly not recognize the figure on the screen. It was obviously herself. But the cameras were well hidden. She had intentionally avoided the cameras outside. She hadn't expected there to be another one. She didn't need to guess to know who it was. As compared to the school's wall, the height of my room isn't much to you. When the Almighty spoke, he never forgot to bring up some dirt on her. Bo Jiu was already used to it. She sat there with the Almighty and admired her dashing figure. She had wanted to confirm the position of the last camera. Qin Mo was watching too. Compared to Bo Jiu, he was more focused on the moment the youngster reached out her right hand to grab onto the wall. Her fair waist was exposed. It's pretty. Bo Jiu assumed the Almighty was referring to her skills. She didn't think much about it. Since it was a dark history, she wanted to delete it. The Almighty was one step ahead of her and pressed save. His action was very casual. Bo Jiu couldn't understand why the Almighty would keep the video of her climbing the wall. It seemed like he was collecting her dark history. For instance, the next time he called her a scholar, the Almighty had allowed her to watch the video. However, Bo Jiu was still too naive. The reason why Qin Mo kept the video wasn't just to leave dark history behind. More importantly, there was a particular scene that made him feel, the moment his eyes sank, Qin Mo's throat moved slightly. In the end, it took a lot of patience. Only then did he suppress the rising thoughts, including the dashing movements. He just wanted to press the youngster onto the ground, pull up the irksome uniform, open the back of the t-shirt, and bite her fair waist and back. He wanted to see her trembling, struggling, unable to support herself, crying and begging for mercy. Qin Mo didn't forget that he was pretending to be a patient. He gulped down a mouthful of water and turned off the video. His handsome side profile didn't reveal any of his thoughts. Tomorrow was the first match of the National League. Bo Jiu grabbed both laptops, wanting to use this chance to perfect her adjustments. Brother Mo, let's play. Pass the game? Qin Mo arched a brow. Bo Jiu smiled. PK, the Almighty had always been an opponent that people wanted to challenge. Be it in the game or in real life. Qin Mo swept the excited youngster a glance. I'm not playing. Why? Based on the way the Almighty had added her in the past, he didn't seem like someone who didn't want to win. Chin Mo watched her, his tone calm. Because I won't PK with someone I like. Bojo hadn't expected such an answer. She stilled. She moved the laptop away. Next, she carried Princess up and rubbed him into a ball. It wasn't easy to reply to the Almighty's words. Princess really wanted to bite him. *CK, he wasn't a plush toy, he would have a temper if he rubbed him like that. Chin Mo watched her actions, his lips curved upwards. He placed the laptop aside. Come over, take his temperature. Didn't I just take it? Bojo finally let go of Princess. Giving a male cat a pigtail was an insult to its bloodline. Princess was furious. He walked a few steps forward valiantly. When he realized his reflection in the mirror wasn't bad, he stopped clawing at Bojo. Chin Mo glanced at his stupid cat before returning his gaze to Bojo's face. It's fine if you don't take my temperature. Go get a towel, my body temperature seems to be rising. Bojo immediately reached out to touch Chin Mo's forehead. It wasn't hot. But even if it wasn't hot, she had to take good care of him. Her pet had always been weak and sickly since young. She pulled open his collar and placed the thermometer inside. Bojo took a closer look and realized his face hadn't recovered. His lips were still pale. Almighty Chin had put in a lot of effort to make himself look weak. One of them was the art of expressing one's emotions. He looked at the person in front of him, so clean that he could almost see the layers of fur. Her posture was one that he was satisfied with. He couldn't help smiling. When Bojo saw the smile, she was reminded of Madame Zhang's words. She suddenly had the urge to confess everything. But Bojo knew better than anyone else. The issue between them had never been a matter of gender. One of them was in the light while the other was in the dark. He had his own rules. She had her own protection. Just looking at the Almighty, Bojo would always be reminded of the time when she wanted to buy him. Even though she knew she couldn't have him, she still wanted him. But Bojo understood. She couldn't touch someone like the Almighty so easily. Of course, she couldn't bear to touch him. She wouldn't let go of anyone who touched him. In reality, Bojo didn't just nibble on an apple when she went downstairs. More importantly, he was communicating with Lawyer Bai. As a lawyer, regardless of how young he was, he would always have his own way of hearing things from the past. Including the Almighty's hand injury. Lawyer Bai was indeed reliable. In less than a minute, he replied, "You have to pay more for the Chin family's matter." Sure. As long as she could find out what exactly happened. The international serial murder case. Lawyer Bai's message was short but every word was useful. All the information has been sealed. If you want to find out more, you will have to hack into the crime squad system. Everything about Chin Mo isn't ordinary, especially his past. I advise you not to investigate him casually, it's hard to say how deep his waters are. Bojo chuckled. My waters are deep too, I'll send you the money when I get home and give you preferential terms. Lawyer Bai, are you going to dismiss me with just one sentence? MMH? Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change. Special forces, that's all I know. From a lawyer's perspective, the case wasn't handled perfectly because Chin Mo misunderstood someone. But no one knows why he jumped into the water to save a criminal. This is an international case and it's hard to investigate the cause of his injury. You can only rely on analysis. But there is one thing, ever since that day, he hasn't been involved in the crime squad, he has been playing esports and managing the Chin group. Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change at all. Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change. This meant that the case was a knot in the Almighty's heart. As long as she knew the details of the case, she would be able to find out why the Almighty's hand was injured. Bojo lowered her lids, still looking like the youngster. But there was only one thought in her mind. Chapter 777. The Almighty's call interrupted Bojo's thoughts. But this time, it wasn't news from the special forces. Instead, it was from the crime squad. The words Little Huang flashed on the screen. Bo Jiu glanced at the caller ID, her hand pausing as she wondered who it was. For the Almighty to give her such an adorable nickname. Unexpectedly, the Almighty picked up the call calmly. "What's up?" The person on the other end of the line replied calmly, "Something big." Even though it was just 2 words, Bo Jiu could tell who it was. It was obviously Director Huang from the crime squad. Director Huang was equivalent to Little Huang. The Almighty's nickname was unparalleled. But there was one thing, the Almighty didn't seem to mind speaking in front of her. Bo Jiu could vaguely hear the other end of the line. "About that woman, we already have an answer. Just like what you said, it's not that simple. There's a dating app that can locate nearby cars. Some drivers will post messages on it. If the girls are willing, they can provide their phone number to the driver, and the driver nearby will call the girl and send her home. But this kind of driver's car is usually registered with the software company, so there shouldn't be any problems." But the girl also confessed that it was because of that time that she contracted AIDS, and once again, Bo Jiu was certain that Almighty Qin had no intention of avoiding her. Because when Director Huang paused, he asked, "And what?" "And we've checked, the car she left her phone number in doesn't seem to be the same car that came to pick her up. Although the driver also drove a BMW, it was clearly recorded on his dashcam that day that he picked up another girl. After sending her home, he also went home, so we ruled out the possibility of that person committing the crime." After the people below told the woman about this, she was in a bad mood. She said she didn't expect that note to be real. Qin Mo's gaze sharpened. "What note?" "There was a note left at the hotel." At first, she didn't pay much attention to it. She thought it was a joke, but now that she thought about it, it was all premeditated. Because there was a line written on the note, "Guess who's going to be the next one to get sick?" Director Huang's voice was clearly softer as he spoke. Because if everything was premeditated, then the nature of this matter would be different. "Who do you think will be next?" It was obvious that this was a serial case. And if it is such a case, the perpetrator would then become a very unstable propagator. The AIDS in his body was his best killing weapon. Bo Jiu had wanted to display her professionalism and respect the Almighty's privacy. However, the Almighty had no intention of letting her go. He even directly asked about the details of the case. "Where did they have sex? Do you have the relevant hotel records?" "It's useless." The woman said she used her ID card to book the room because the man said he forgot to take the red wine in the car and wanted to get it first. He asked her to send the room number to his phone after she booked the room. "That's not going to help." Bo Jiu couldn't help whistling. This whistle was coincidentally heard by the minion. His eyes widened, and his round and bulging body exclaimed, "What's going on?" Qin Mo swept the youngster a glance, replying calmly, "My cat." Director Huang felt that the answer was an insult to his intelligence. Whose cat would whistle? Just as he was about to question him, a cat's meow came from the other side. Bo Jiu pulled Princess over, caressing him. Princess wasn't just meowing, it wasn't just the tip of his hair. Did she think he didn't have a temper by caressing him? Qin Mo still looked sick, but his voice made them clench their teeth. "You should have heard it, he isn't peaceful today." Not only did this sentence tarnish his pet's reputation, it also caused Director Huang to swallow all the questions in his mind. She said listlessly, "Then ask your cat why it whistles." Qin Mo replied slowly, "We'll discuss that later." The hotel corridor didn't capture the man's face? No, it's not because he was in disguise, but because there were too many people at the hotel that night. He followed a lot of people into the elevator, and after he got out of the elevator, he kept his head down, so the cameras didn't catch anything. Director Huang clenched his teeth. It was obvious how much of a headache this case was for him. Qin Mo replied faintly, "Got it." He prepared to hang up. Director Huang sighed. "Can't you give me some psychological profiling so that I can arrest him?" "Yes, I'll send it to you later." With that, he hung up and looked at the youngster in front of him. Tell me, why did you whistle just now? Bo Jio smiled faintly. The two of them went to the hotel and the girl paid the bill. The man is either handsome or rich. Oh. Chin Mo arched a brow. What do you mean? Bo Jio placed her laptop down. For example, handsome men like me and brother Mo, there are many who want to give birth to our babies. If they can sleep with us, they wouldn't care about the money. It was the same logic as if the Almighty was willing to be kidnapped by her, but she had to leave a sum of money behind. Compared to the money, the Almighty was more important. Tell me about the second scenario. The youngster leaned against the balcony and sat on it. That posture was very handsome. She lifted the corner of her lips, and the mole under her eyes was very obvious at that moment. The girl thinks that the guy is too rich, so she wants to cast a long line to catch a big fish. That's why she doesn't care about the small things, because she thinks that the guy will give her more than that. Brother Mo, you're a psychology major, so you should be able to guess what I'm saying. Besides, your phone's volume isn't low, and it's impossible for a boyfriend and girlfriend to make an appointment through a dating app. So, the first thing to eliminate is the possibility of an intimate relationship between the two of them. That leaves only handsomeness and money to make the girl pay for a room, but I guess the latter is more likely. Chin Mo glanced up, gesturing for the youngster to continue. Bo Jio tilted her head, exuding the devilish aura of a playboy. If I was the one getting a room with a girl, I definitely wouldn't think of bringing red wine. This is the style of a rich person, driving a luxurious car with a bottle of good wine. It would be best if the clothes on her body were expensive as well. That way, more people would be hooked since some girls care about such things. I'm guessing that the victim must have a strong sense of pride. Her monthly salary isn't enough, but she would spend 2,000 to 3,000 on cosmetics and 10,000 to 20,000 on luxurious items. She wants to be a phoenix without sewing. These are the most basic thoughts of a person. I can't judge if it's right or wrong, but it's obvious that the culprit is targeting this mentality of the girl. Because these girls aren't guarded against the rich, they would sleep with him on the first day. Bo Jio had never imagined that one day, she would be sitting together with the Almighty to discuss a case. Furthermore, they would be acting as friends. It was a unique experience and feeling. It was easy to feel a sense of excitement that she had never felt before. But very quickly, the excitement was extinguished by the Almighty's words. What if you were the one getting a room with a girl? Chin Mo tilted his head, his voice cold. I didn't know you had such thoughts. Bo Jio paused, feeling a little guilty. It was just an analogy. It seems like you aren't good at physics, you should start learning Chinese again. Chin Mo's gaze didn't warm up. Who taught you to make such an analogy? Bo Jio felt that it was better not to talk about academics. Bo Jio felt that it was better not to talk about academic matters. She leaned closer to him and smiled. Brother Mo, isn't it about time for your psychological profiling? Since she had taken care of him for the past 2 days, Chin Mo's coldness dissipated. The culprit is between 25 and 35 years old. He isn't very handsome, but he isn't ugly either. He has a certain level of male charm and the smell on his body is very pleasant. He is also very particular about his clothes, clean and rich. He has a certain amount of free time and is extremely hostile towards vain women. He is unmarried. Bo Jio had only guessed that the culprit was clean and rich. How could the Almighty have guessed so much? The smell on his body is pleasant? How could he have guessed that? It was understandable that he wasn't married, since married men would create a sense of distance. From Bo Jio's perspective, the culprit was also unmarried. Moreover, he was between 25 and 35 years old and had a certain level of male charm. Bo Jio had also guessed that he wouldn't be ugly. For instance, if he had a big belly like Director Huang, no matter how rich he was, girls wouldn't be willing to ride in his car or fork out money for him. Hence, the culprit definitely wouldn't look bad. In fact, his facial features were perfect and would be easy to spot. But the smell? Chin Mo lowered his lids to look at the youngster's furrowed brows. The silver hair on the top of his head was fluffy. Chin Mo lifted the corner of his mouth. Seems like the wall-jumping scholar isn't good enough. You didn't learn some knowledge in biology class. When a man and a woman are first attracted to each other, other than appearance, the scent they emit. Otherwise, why would some people take a shower before doing it? MMH? Bojo didn't know how to reply. She pulled Princess over and started to caress him. Who would learn such things in biology class? Besides, other than the Almighty, no one would use such a method to analyze a case. This is going to be a troublesome serial case. It's obvious that the culprit's IQ isn't low. He's thought through everything thoroughly. I'm guessing that the original phone number has become a useless number that no one picks up. Bojo's efforts weren't in vain. Chin Mo sat on the pure white bed, his brows arched. Director Huang didn't mention anything about the phone not being able to reach him. I guessed. Bojo didn't avoid Chin Mo's probing. It's simple. If I were the culprit, I would prepare some tools. Every time I make an appointment with someone, the SIM card for the day would be rendered useless. After changing to the next target, I would use a new number to contact them. Even though the official SIM cards are all registered with real names, there are still ways to get one that doesn't require one's real name. The car plate would probably be tampered with as well, something that can be learned with a little money. Besides, the culprit would only appear on weekends when traffic is heavy. It wouldn't be hard to pass it off as real. Chin Mo fiddled with the lighter, his voice calm. Not a bad theory and concept for the culprit. Such a compliment was enough to make one break out in cold sweat. If it had been anyone else, they would have felt guilty. Bojo knew she couldn't back down at this moment. With the experience from the previous live stream, it is indeed easy to guess. There was a smacking sound. Chin Mo kept the lighter, smiling at the youngster. You are hinting that the culprit isn't a newbie. It's never tiring talking to Brother Mo. Bojo threw herself onto the bed, placing her arms behind her head. She knew the Almighty wasn't suspecting her anymore and could focus on the case. But I can't eliminate the possibility that someone is teaching him to do it. Before she could finish, Chin Mo spoke. He might be sick, but he was still behaving like a rich young master, exuding an aura of abstinence. Bojo chuckled lightly. That was indeed what she wanted to say. It's a dating app, the messages are public but the girls' phone numbers aren't. Of course, it's easy for us hackers to find out, but it isn't easy for an ordinary person. This time, Chin Mo didn't reply. Instead, he reached for his phone and dialed. Once again, Bojo saw the words Little Huang. She wanted to know what Director Huang's thoughts would be after he found out about his nickname. Director Huang couldn't be bothered about that now. When he saw that it was Chin Mo, he was filled with excitement. Is the answer out? Serial murder case. Chin Mo's voice was calm and emotionless. The mastermind is Z, it wasn't just Director Huang. Even Bojo stilled. Z was the mastermind? Bojo arched a brow. That theory, combined the maiden's sacrifice and this case into one. Chin Mo's gaze was heavy. I will send the psychological profile of the culprit to your email. Find the culprit according to the criteria. I don't care how you do it, tell the public not to make casual appointments. Director Huang replied, that's easy to say, but aren't you overthinking this matter? The maiden's sacrifice was initiated through the forums, but this time, it's through an app. I don't think they're the same. Both cases are carried out through the internet and the victims are all female. All of the culprits' information will reveal their psychological activities and they are all related to sleeping. The only difference is the method of sleeping, but the nature is the same. Most importantly, no culprit would leave a note to inform the public that he is the culprit so that the police can find him faster. This is Z's second challenge to the crime squad. Chin Mo's every word seemed to hit the nail on the head. Director Huang's jaw dropped and he scratched his head. He scratched his head again. This is clearly a challenge to you. Our key case investigation unit has been implicated because of you. Don't make a move after you lock onto the target. I will send someone to contact the culprit and find Z. Qin Mo hung up once he was done. He didn't give little Huang a chance to react. Bo Jiu felt that it was time to recommend herself. Brother Mo, what do you think about me contacting him? My hand speed isn't bad. Since it concerned her impersonator, she had to be more proactive. Qin Mo kept his phone, replying lazily, no. All right. In that case, she could only follow the people from the key case investigation unit. She respected her pet's decision. But it wouldn't clash with her methods. Qin Mo tilted his head and glanced at the youngster lying beside him. His tone carried a hint of warning. Behave yourself. If I catch you again, you should know the consequences. Brother Mo, where's the trust between humans? Bo Jiu sighed deeply. It has been a long time since I've messed with the internet. Do you know what it means to a hacker? It's the world of lousy hackers. Even though he knew the youngster wouldn't be telling him the truth. The corners of Qin Mo's lips lifted when he saw the depressed look on her face. Bo Jiu lifted her lips, hopping off the bed to take a shower, but she didn't forget to bring her phone. She closed the bathroom door. The first thing she did was to turn on the noise-canceling shower. Amidst the sound of the shower, the youngster lowered her lids, her long fingers pressing on the screen. Her dark eyes were unprecedentedly bright, the letters turning into strings of words. Follow the crime squad member, hunting operation commencing, Z. She raised her hand and sent the message. Bo Jiu tugged off her uniform. The next thing she heard was the sound of water splashing. It was dark outside the window. But for the esports players, they could only feel it when they played at night. Ding! The sound of an email rang. Watanabe glanced at the person reading a comic on the floor behind him. Vice Captain, your phone is ringing. Hoshino glanced down. When he saw the line of words, he moved his fingers, choosing to delete it. Even the traces were erased. At this moment, he just realized it. Z was really back. He wasn't sure when. It started to rain again. In a remote county hospital, the sound of documents flipping continued, suppressing the sound of the rain. Fortunately, they were all soldiers with good physiques. They weren't afraid of the cold in the archive room. If it had been an ordinary person, they would have been exhausted. The Special Forces soldier was there too. Since it was an order from young master, there couldn't be any mistakes. With him around, he felt that this matter was reliable. But it was undeniable that there were too many documents to check and they could only rely on manual labor. There weren't any shortcuts. Just when he thought they would have to check for another night to find what they were looking for, a voice rang out. Chapter 778. The night sky was accompanied by a light drizzle, each drop sending chills down one's spine. Su Mei and Wu Zhen, who were sitting in the back row, had never suffered like this before. The former claimed to be cultured, but she had always been a mistress and enjoyed the pleasures of a ready-made woman. The latter's background meant that she wouldn't suffer much. Su Mei was still wearing a dress. She hadn't felt cold since she had been in a heated room previously. Now, she was a little irritated from the cold. The garrison in this small place wasn't the same as some of the well-known troops. It was really an insanely poor place. At the thought of how He Honghua had given birth to the little bastard who had been at odds with her, Su Mei felt indignant. Su Mei's heart was filled with unwillingness. Why was a country bumpkin living better than her? She was a highly educated person. Su Mei wasn't the only one who couldn't sit still in such a situation. Even Wu Zhen's expression was extremely ugly. What was the crime squad trying to do? Why did they have to stare at her? She would be able to get her police badge back in a month. With this ruckus, it would definitely be difficult for her to be transferred to the same rank. The most important thing was the secret. Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, sweeping a glance at Su Mei who was still throwing a tantrum. What exactly is it that makes you think you can take down that ungrateful gay from the Fu family? Now that things have come to this, can't you give me an answer now? Su Mei looked up and paced back and forth before saying, I always felt that He Honghua had a problem. At that time, she was still a shareholder of the Fu Corporation and had the right to enjoy a good environment for childbirth, but she just disappeared for 3 months and chose to give birth in a small county town. I was also pregnant at that time, only 5 months later than He Honghua, but in such a short time, she came back with a boy. If it weren't for that little country bumpkin, Fu Zhongyi would have left all his belongings to my son. It was all because Fu Zhongyi was blinded by his son and I was pregnant, so I couldn't give him any advice, so he gave me the cold shoulder at that time. Fortunately, that little country bumpkin didn't live up to his expectations, otherwise, I really wouldn't know how to get his attention back. At that time, I wanted to get someone to investigate, but later on, I hired a private detective. He said that when He Honghua gave birth, she found a friend of hers to help her deliver the baby in the county hospital. They even did some confidential work, but I couldn't find out who that friend was, but according to the nurse who accompanied her during the delivery, He Honghua. Su Mei looked up and paced back and forth before saying, I already felt that there was something wrong with He Honghua. At that time, she was still a shareholder of the Fu Corporation and had the right to enjoy a very good environment for childbirth, but she just disappeared for 3 months and chose to give birth in a small county town. Su Mei paused. It wasn't a boy, it was a girl. Upon hearing that, Wu Zhen suddenly lifted her lids, her pupils dilating. A girl? Are you sure? It was because the nurse wasn't sure. She said she vaguely remembered it was a girl, but later said she remembered wrongly. It should be a boy. Su Mei clenched her fists. That's why I wanted Miss Wu to come with me to look for He Honghua's birth information. She was just from a village, so she definitely didn't have the ability to falsify the information. Even if we could settle it with some money, the hospital's records are sealed and ordinary people wouldn't be able to see them. If Miss Wu didn't have the authority to investigate, this matter would be difficult. But now, it's all because of those stupid soldiers. Wu Zhen's expression changed. If He Honghua really had a girl, why did she raise him as a boy? Miss Wu probably doesn't understand. Miss Wu, you probably don't understand. If she didn't do that, she would have died of poverty. Fu Zhongyi is a nouveau riche after all. That's how the villagers think. The eldest son is the most important. Once they have a son, they won't think about getting a divorce. If Miss Wu saw how happy Fu Zhongyi was at that time, you would understand why He Honghua did that. If it were me, I would have done the same. Su Mei sneered. He Honghua, that country bumpkin, usually pretends to be careless and doesn't speak according to the situation, but I didn't expect her to be so scheming. She has been trapping me for almost 18 years. Once that little bumpkin comes of age, the entire Fu Corporation will be taken over by them. I was about to succeed, but who knew that the little bumpkin had secretly bought so many shares of the company? Now, not only has my brother been removed from the board of directors, even I can't go to the company, leaving only old Fu to deal with He Honghua and those stubborn old fogies who have no idea what's going on in their minds. They insist that they shouldn't do anything dishonorable for the sake of the kindness they have shown in the past. What's the point of being a company owner? It's fine as long as they can maximize their profits. I've already ground down those people who don't know what's good for them, but that little bumpkin just had to show up. I really didn't expect that he would come back from the ashes. Now, this is the only way to bring that little bumpkin down. If he's really a girl, he'll definitely be eliminated from the national contest because of his fake identity. At that time, not only will he not have a share in the company, but his fans will also join forces to scold him. After all, ever since that little bumpkin came out, there has been a lot of bad news about him. Wu Zhen understood everything Su Mei said. And if the gay was really a girl, Brother Mo wouldn't treat him the way he did now. At the end of the day, the gay could be so arrogant and stay by Brother Mo's side because he was a guy. Brother Mo wouldn't have his guard up against him. But at the same time, Brother Mo hated women's deceit, especially this person who used such a disguise to get close to him. The outcome was obvious. Wuzhen couldn't wait to tell Qin Mo about it. Su Mei was still vexed. If only we had arrived a day earlier, we would have gotten the files. So what if we didn't get it? Wuzhen's eyes dimmed. You should have told me earlier. That way, she would have had something to talk to Brother Mo about. Moreover, from the looks of it, Wuzhen felt that there was a 50% chance that the gay was a girl. But she didn't know what kind of girl was so hateful. Especially her craftiness. And her usual behavior. She couldn't think of anything like that. However, there was one thing, even if there was none. She could create something for him. Su Mei knew that Wuzhen wasn't happy. She didn't want to offend her, so she said gently, I really didn't know anyone would dare to go against the Wu family, so, go against the Wu family? Wuzhen interrupted her with a smile. Just based on these people. Madam Su, you must have heard of my grandfather's connections. Just wait, I spoke to my grandfather long before we were sent here. He will think of a way to get you out with me. We will be back in Jiang City by tomorrow morning, just in time for the National League. When the time comes, she would tell Brother Mo. That gay's fate had come to an end. Su Mei heard Wuzhen's words, her discomfort disappearing completely. Miss Wu is really thoughtful. As long as the Wu family's connections were there, what was there to be afraid of? At the same time, the soldier handed over the files he found to the Special Forces soldier. The Special Forces soldier remembered Qin Mo's instructions. After sending the files, he had to seal it immediately. He couldn't let anyone see the details of the files, including himself. Everyone retreat. The Special Forces soldier held on to the files, giving the order in a low voice. The soldiers had always been swift in their actions. When they came, they didn't leave any precautions. When they retreated, they didn't leave any clues. In the end, only the Special Forces soldier was left in the Hummer. He dialed the number he had called the most that day. Speak. One word was enough to let him know that at least it was convenient for his young master to call. I found the things, I'll rush back now. I'll reach the city in about an hour. The Special Forces soldier started the car, asking in a low voice, where should I wait for young master? Qin Mo glanced out of the window. Come to the military courtyard, I'll take it personally. The Special Forces soldier paused. Head to the main house? Ever since that operation, he hadn't seen his young master again. After all, it had been a long time since his young master had been out. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. Something happened in Jiang City, gather the brothers and get to work. The Special Forces soldier's eyes lit up. Young master, what do you mean? F***CK. I've been waiting for this day for too long. Cut the crap, come first, I have a mission for you. With that, Qin Mo hung up. It could be said that it was a phone call. He seemed to be calculating the time. For instance, the youngster who was showering should be out soon. Bo Jiu was indeed out, drying her hair with one hand and rubbing her eyes with the other. Brother Mo, you should change your shampoo to something milder. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster with messy hair. He placed his phone at the side and pulled her forward, narrowing his eyes. You didn't bring your eye drops? Who would bring that kind of thing to climb over the wall? Was he looking for a burden? Qin Mo couldn't care less about pretending to be sick. He stood up from the bed and said, wait here. All right. The white towel hung down, covering half of the youngster's face. The faint smile on his face indicated that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Sure enough, after Qin Mo left, Hun Mian's expression changed. Bo Jiu glanced towards the phone on the bedside table. She wanted to unlock it. Her hands were itching. It was because of little Huang's phone call. It was obvious that before this, the Almighty hadn't contacted the crime squad. That was the problem. If he wasn't from the crime squad, who exactly had the charm to make the Almighty send her messages and occasionally pick up her phone? She didn't bring her tools. But with her knowledge of the keyboard, it wasn't impossible. It wasn't impossible to get the password. As a qualified international hacker, she still had the basic professional ethics. For instance, she used the materials she could find. Bojo took out the transparent tape she had taken from the bottom and stuck it vertically on the phone screen. Then she stretched it. The fine sweat on his fingertips would definitely leave traces on the phone screen if he were to unlock it often. Even a clean person like the Almighty couldn't prevent his body temperature from rising. To a normal person, even if they took the items out, they wouldn't be able to tell anything. But Bojo wasn't a normal person. She was more sensitive to the numbers on the screen. She was more sensitive than anyone else. The white towel was still on top of her silver head. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she identified the numbers one by one. Then, she pressed the button. 520999. The moment the phone screen lit up, the youngster paused. The youth paused, the tips of his ears turning red. The password. She didn't have time to think about anything else. Bojo glanced at the call history. As the young lord of the hacker world, Bojo would always have skills that normal hackers wouldn't train. Mental arithmetic, memory, and sensitivity to numbers. These were things she had learned since she was young. With a glance, even if she couldn't remember everything, she could still remember the general idea. She wanted to find something. But it was obvious that with the Almighty's style, he wouldn't leave any clues on his phone. There was only a string of numbers. Who exactly was he? The moment the thought entered her mind, her left ear twitched. There were approaching footsteps. Bojo slid her fingers, returning the phone screen to the main page. She pressed the white towel on her head with the other hand, sitting on the bed in a carefree manner. Chin Mo walked in, glancing at the youngster. He reached out and pinched her chin, ordering calmly, "Raise your head." Bojo was obedient since she had just done something bad. She raised her head carefully, smiling at the Almighty, the type that thought she was handsome. But the Almighty didn't know what was good for him. His beautiful brows arched. "What did you do? Why are you trying to please me?" "Bojo, it seems like you really did something." Chin Mo watched her reaction, sweeping a glance towards the bedside table. "The position of the phone, it wasn't like this when I went out. It seems like wall-climbing students like to go through other people's things. In that case, you should know the password, 5209. When Bojo heard the password, she coughed instinctively, feeling as though she was choking. Chin Mo continued to pinch the youngster's chin, tilting it upwards. He was nonchalant, his handsome face inching closer, his breath hitting her face. "Honestly, are you trying to decipher all the password-protected items in the room because you want to hear my confession?" Bojo. The Almighty's ability to backstab her. "I clearly returned it," Bojo muttered. She really couldn't tell which part of the phone had moved. MMH. Chin Mo turned, his fair fingers pointing. "It's about a centimeter away." Bojo. "That little distance. You wall-climbing students won't be able to tell." Chin Mo didn't forget to attack her. After all, it's the difference in distance, and to a certain extent, it has to do with physics. Bojo was completely listless. Chin Mo was still sizing the youngster up, chatting casually. "How did you decipher the password?" Bojo had lost all hope in life. When the eye drops landed on her eyeballs, she felt a stinging pain. She raised her hand and pointed at the tools in the bin. "Don't blink." Chin Mo fixed the youngster's face, not forgetting to sweep a glance over. "Tape. That's a smart idea. There are deep and light marks on the phone screen, perfect for deciphering the password. Did you cheat, Madame Zhang? If Madame Zhang finds out about your persona, she won't be able to eat you tomorrow." One of Bojo's eyes was shut, leaving the other one. Her cheeks were puffed up, looking like a pretty youngster. "My handsome persona is enough, everything else is meaningless. I didn't lie to Madame Zhang, I stole it." Chin Mo chuckled. "Does stealing give you a sense of accomplishment?" "No." Bojo touched her pocket, reaching out to place a crumpled 10 yuan in Qin Mo's hand. I'll buy it at the original price. Qin Mo arched a brow. It's only 10 yuan, it's not even enough to buy a candy. She shouldn't be discussing the common people's money values with the Almighty. 10 yuan was enough to buy a few lollipops. The last drop of eye drops fell into her eye socket. Her vision was plunged into darkness. All that was left was the man's pleasant voice. Don't open your eyes, close them for a while, I'm going to shower. Bo Jiu was lying on her side. Princess had wanted to sneak an attack on her since he wouldn't be able to live up to his name if he didn't take revenge for being needed. Who knew that the moment she walked into the room, the youngster would scoop her up and carry her in his arms. Meow. This youngster was so cruel, how did Master tolerate him? Princess's body was soft, furry and soft. Moreover, there was eye drops in her eyes. The tip of her nose was filled with a familiar scent. MMH. The Almighty's scent. The Almighty didn't seem to care that she was peeking at his privacy. Her puppy was still so nice to her. The youngster's silver hair fell from her ears, covering her beautiful eyes. Even the hand that was hugging Princess had unknowingly loosened its grip, lowering slowly. His breathing became calm. When Qin Mo walked out while drying his hair, this was the scene he saw. His deep gaze dimmed. He walked over, reaching out to caress the face that had sunk into the pillow. The phone screen beside him lit up. Qin Mo stood up, glancing at the caller ID. He walked out of the room before picking up the call. Young master, I'm here. With that, the Special Forces soldier turned the Hummer's headlights into double flashes. Qin Mo glanced up. Don't make any noise, I'm going out. The Special Forces soldier was confused. Why was young master so cautious even in the same family? Besides, didn't young master dislike the rain? Why did he come out? Just as he was thinking about this, Qin Mo walked out in his pajamas. Qin Mo walked out in his pajamas. The pure white cotton home clothes matched with the black umbrella in his hand. There was also the 4 patch on the back of his hand. The Special Forces soldier was stunned by his boss's get-up. What was young master doing? Was he pretending to be a sick rich young master? Qin Mo didn't waste his breath, pulling the car door open and entering. File. The Special Forces soldier handed the file over. It's sealed, no one has seen it before. Qin Mo took it. He didn't say a word, his long slender fingers flicking through the file. It was a detailed report of the pregnant woman, her name and age included. It was obviously He Honghua when she was young. Qin Mo's indifferent gaze swept downwards. Suddenly, that pair of eyes, which had always been calm, actually shook violently. Chapter 779. Under the dim light of the phone. A corner of the file was revealed. On the left was the name and on the right was the gender. It was an ordinary birth file. But the word woman, which wasn't very big, was reflected in Qin Mo's eyes. It stirred up the water in his eyes. That fella who didn't know what to do with himself. That fella who liked to brag about his handsomeness. That fella who fought more fiercely than a man. That fella who wanted to compare size with him the first time they met. That fella who didn't know what was good for her and always swayed in front of him, making him gay. Was it a female? There was a loud boom. Thunder rumbled in the sky. The car window reflected Qin Mo's chiseled and handsome face. He had thick eyebrows and a high nose bridge. At this moment, even his mixed facial features couldn't hide the shock he was feeling. No, he wasn't really shocked. It would be more accurate to say that he didn't know how to describe his expression. His first reaction was to flip the file over and raise it up, looking at the Special Forces soldier. The Special Forces soldier had never seen his young master like this. In his impression, the young master was always at ease, like a god walking in the flames of hell. No matter how the surrounding environment changed, the young master was still the same. But this time, there was an obvious change in his young master's emotions. And it was a huge change. Is there a problem with the file? This was the only possibility that the Special Forces soldier could think of. Qin Mo's deep eyes dimmed, the impact coming from the depths of his chest made him clench his fists. No, there's no problem. It was obvious that his young master had adjusted his emotions. But what exactly was this file for his young master to be like this? The Special Forces soldier couldn't help but be curious, stretching his neck to take a look. Qin Mo pulled the file down, his side profile elegant, his gaze indifferent, but there was an innate sense of oppression. The Special Forces soldier froze, retracting his neck immediately. He was afraid that his young master would break it if he was unhappy. Apart from me, who else has seen this file? Qin Mo's low voice mixed with the dripping rain, giving off a different feeling. The Special Forces soldier sat up straight. Sir, according to the requirements of the mission, it's all confidential. Other than young master, no one else has seen it. Qin Mo was obviously distracted, but he tried his best to maintain his basic thinking. His long fingers slid over a word in the document, and his gaze deepened. Pass down the order. Don't let anyone know that someone investigated He Honghua's birth details. Go and make a new file according to the hospital specifications and put it back. Make another one and put it back? The Special Forces soldier turned the steering wheel. But I haven't seen the one in young master's hand, and I don't know what's in it. Qin Mo lifted his lids, replying slowly, do I have to teach you how to forge now? Hey. The Special Forces soldier chuckled. I know how to fake it. The main thing is what effect young master wants to achieve. Qin Mo folded the document, his voice calm. There's no need for any effects, just fill in the gender column as male. So simple. The Special Forces soldier was dumbfounded. What kind of forgery was this? The young master came down personally just to instruct him on such a trivial matter? The famous Special Forces soldier felt like he was just a logistician. Chapter 780. The soldier's eyes lit up when he heard the last part. He was finally energized. It seems like you're really going to make a comeback. Qin Mo didn't speak. His eyes were still on the paper in his hands as though he was confirming something. The soldier wanted to say something, but Qin Mo had already pushed the car door open and walked out. He held a pure black umbrella over his head and the rain poured down. No one could see Qin Mo's expression under the umbrella. The paper crumpled in his palm bit by bit. Under his black hair were eyes as deep as the sea. Until now, the unusual throbbing in his chest hadn't calmed down. Even his breathing was filled with white air. Madame Zhang saw her young master standing outside. She hurriedly put on her jacket and wanted to rush out. But before she could move, Qin Mo had already walked in. Qin Mo had already walked in, the closed umbrella dripping with water. Whether it was his shoulders or his black hair, there were still traces of moisture. At first, Madame Zhang thought it was because of the rain. That was why young master was in a bad mood. But after a closer look, she didn't see anything bad. Because she could vaguely see the corners of his lips lifting. There was an indescribable ruthlessness and playfulness. He looked as though he was going to teach someone a lesson. But he wasn't really angry. Instead, he chuckled. When his black hair fell down, he looked unusually handsome. Madame Zhang was confused. Why was she getting more and more confused about young master's thoughts? Was there something good? Or was there something bad? Qin Mo didn't go upstairs immediately. Instead, he took the lighter from the coffee table. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. The feeling of abstinence grew stronger as the smoke lingered. But after he lit the cigarette, he didn't smoke it. Instead, he pressed the burning long and thin cigarette against the file. Qin Mo was different from any other time. The aura of a warlord's young master was revealed. There were armed soldiers stationed in the courtyard. Qin Mo's home attire didn't seem out of place at all. His indifference didn't hide his dominance. Perhaps only the Qin family could do this. In the flames, before the cigarette was finished, the file had already burned to ashes. Madame Zhang watched from the side without saying a word. In such a family, everyone knew that the burning of some letters couldn't be questioned. Qin Mo held the cigarette with one hand. His posture was indescribably elegant. But his thoughts weren't elegant at all. He should have taken that guy long ago. He reached out and put out the cigarette in the ashtray. Qin Mo stood up and walked upstairs. He walked very slowly. But with every step he took, his eyes would darken a little. Until the youth's sleeping face appeared in his line of sight, some emotions erupted like a volcano in his eyes. Deep in her dreams, she hadn't realized the situation she was in. If she had known, she wouldn't have been able to sleep so peacefully. She thought that it would be fine as long as she tightened her breasts and got ready for anything. Unfortunately, a fatal secret had already been stolen by Qin Mo unknowingly. Good eye drops had a certain sleep-inducing effect, which was to allow the patient's eyes to get sufficient rest. This point was also outside of the incident. But because of this, Bojiu was in a deeper sleep than usual. Qin Mo looked down at the youngster sleeping on his bed, his silver hair contrasting with his fair and clean face. Chapter 781. Gradually, his gaze darkened and even his breathing changed. The usually elegant Qin Mo started to feel thirsty. Qin Mo threw the lighter to the other side of the bed. It seemed to be the start of something. The evil fire in his body surged towards Qin Mo, almost engulfing him. He wanted a more intense kiss, wanted to get closer and even wanted to tear the person in front of him into pieces. Qin Mo could clearly feel the agitation in his blood, the heat coming from all directions, finally gathering at a point between his legs. Qin Mo walked towards the youngster, reaching out to tug his collar open, as though he couldn't suppress the desire anymore. His fingers caressed her waist and moved upwards. He was probably making a final confirmation. To confirm if she was really a girl. His fingers obviously touched the restraint. Qin Mo's gaze sharpened. He pulled out the cloth and sighed. Bojiu rubbed her head against the pillow, her voice cold and slightly hoarse. It floated in the air, causing the atmosphere to become extremely ambiguous and bewildering. Qin Mo looked at the person in his arms. His eyes, which were as dark as ink, were tainted with a deep darkness. How could he have believed that this was a fake back then? His fingers moved upwards with that strength. It was very light, so light that it couldn't wake the person in deep sleep, but it carried an electric sensation. Qin Mo felt the indescribable smoothness of his fingertips, his breath getting hotter, inch by inch hitting the ear with the black diamond. His eyes watched the youngster's face, he couldn't help but kiss the smooth spot through the pajamas. The youngster's behavior was easy to lose control. Her pajamas were rolled up from the bottom to the top, revealing a pair of semicircles vaguely visible above her tight and fair abdomen. Qin Mo's gaze darkened, his fingers digging in, a certain spot was frighteningly hot. It was impossible for a person in deep sleep to not feel anything. But his eyelids were very heavy. Bojiu felt her entire body go soft, but she couldn't tell what was different. When the numbing current rose from her tailbone, she couldn't help but frown. But her body was indeed honest. A girl at this age was like a budding flower, waiting to be plucked. Hence, every part of her body was very sensitive. Bojiu moved her legs uncontrollably. She wasn't sure what she was rubbing. But this action was undoubtedly seduction in Qin Mo's eyes. You want it? It was a low word, because he knew the person in his arms wouldn't wake up. That feeling made him want to ignore everything else and just have her. But, compared to a certain someone who was half asleep, he preferred to see someone voluntarily sit on his waist. Especially when she begged him with her raspy voice, saying that she couldn't take it anymore. Qin Mo's throat tightened. His fingers slid downwards, locking onto her thighs. Through the not-so-thick pajama pants, the youngster who wanted to rub against him felt his scalding heat. Just like that, he rubbed against her inch by inch. He didn't know how long it had been before he pulled away and entered the bathroom with a dark look in his eyes. This time, he didn't even remove his pajamas. The cold water splashed on his head, but no matter how hard he tried, it couldn't extinguish the swelling because of a certain someone. He couldn't recall the scene he had seen just now. That annoying look of hers, her pajamas rolled up from her waist, revealing her fair skin, messy hair, slightly opened lips, and furrowed brows. That expression only made him want to destroy her even more. The only flaw was that her eyes were closed. If she were to open her eyes, she would be looking at how hard he was going to take her. Her eyes, which had always been clear and distinct, would definitely widen and be filled with seductive tears. Chin Mo raised his head, his slender neck stretched, like the wildest and most beautiful beast. He recalled the expression the youngster had when she had helped him, his hands moving faster. The water from the shower flowed down, outlining the perfect lines of the man's back. Every part of him was filled with strength. Just like that, Chin Mo leaned against the bathroom wall, allowing the water to diffuse into the air. He waited for the water to heat up. When the water turned hot, his entire body was already drenched. He reached out to press the hair on his forehead that had fallen along with the water. His eyes were deep and captivating. There was a type of person who could exude a fatal sexiness when they were so handsome that they were self-deprecating. Without a doubt, Chin Mo was that type of person. But the heat took too long to subside. When he came out again, it was already half an hour later. He walked towards the youngster again. He reached out and restored everything to its original state, including the youngster's pajamas and buttons. Chin Mo's restoration ability was stronger than anyone else's. It could almost be said to be exactly the same. Poor Bojo. She didn't know that for a whole 20 minutes, Chin Mo had been trying the dessert in front of him. Which meant that Chin Mo didn't intend to expose this secret. Not only did he not expose it, all the decisions he made were to help the youngster continue to keep this a secret. He had made up his mind to turn gay. Who would have thought that the person who turned him gay was a woman? Since a certain someone liked to play hide and seek with him. Then he would play with her properly. But this time, his trump card was in his hands. Chin Mo lifted the corners of his lips, full of evil intentions. Bojo didn't know that so much had happened after hugging Princess to sleep. She even flipped over. Chin Mo arched a brow, as though he had thought of something. He took out his phone and took a photo of the sleeping youngster. In the end, he felt that it wasn't a good photo. Because the collarbone was exposed. He reached out and covered the blanket. Next, he lay on it, raised his phone high, and pressed the photo button. After the photo was taken, he logged into his official Weibo and posted a few words. Such a dessert, I really want to eat it all. In an instant, there was an uproar. Almighty Chin actually sent a message in the middle of the night. This isn't normal. *CK, this sleeping photo, I'm drooling. It's so gay. No, I remember that the tour for the National League hasn't started yet. Why is Almighty Chin and Little Spade in the same room? The person above is so stupid. The Almighty sent this photo to say that even if he isn't participating in the competition, he can still sleep with Big Spade. This is daily life. A daily public display of affection. Declaring sovereignty. Their relationship is so good in private. Am I the only one who cares what the dessert is? There isn't any dessert in this photo. Chapter 782. It was the middle of the night. It wasn't just the fans, even the esports media were woken up by this post. The price of waking up the media meant a lot of accumulated public relations work. Feng Yi had originally wanted to sleep early for a day. After all, the National League was tomorrow. As a manager who had followed Chin Mo, it would be a lie if he said he wasn't excited. Finally, he didn't have a meal but his phone was blown up. Boss Lu, you must be joking. When has Almighty Chin been gay? As for his relationship with Spade Z, you should ask him himself when you see him in the future. As Feng Yi replied, he wanted to rush over to the Qin family. How could such a photo be posted so casually? Boss Feng, don't hide it from me. If young Master Qin really likes men, I'll arrange a few younger ones for him next time. When Feng Yi heard that, he arched a brow and said with a fox-like viciousness, Boss Lu, you should know that Boss Qin doesn't like this kind of thing. You should keep the tender ones for yourself. Last time, Boss Zhang made the decision on his own and sent someone to young Master Qin. You saw it too. Lu seemed to have been choked by this reminder, and he laughed awkwardly. I was just joking. Young Master Qin must be busy with the competition recently. These people just randomly took out a photo and they're spouting nonsense. I'll have a good talk with my subordinates later. Feng Yi chuckled. It's because Almighty Qin and Little Spade have a good relationship and Almighty Qin treats him well. Boss Lu, you can report whatever you want. After all, the kids of Supreme Alliance have a good relationship. I'll try to stick close to the truth. I'll treat Boss Lu to a meal next time. Supreme Alliance has many promotional activities to do. Everyone knew how popular the Qin group's team was. Any event could cause an explosion of topics. If he could get exclusive publicity, Boss Lu would definitely agree. Don't worry, there won't be any false reports. CP needs to be loved, but there has to be a limit. I didn't expect Boss Lu to know about CP. Feng Yi usually had to deal with one thing before dealing with the other. Boss Lu didn't want to let go of the phone. I can't help it, don't you know how much my daughter loves that Spade Z from your family? She keeps telling me every day that if Big Spade belongs to Almighty Qin, she would be at ease. She even said that Lin Feng and Yun Hu are a perfect match. Why can't they be together officially? Brother Feng, let's make a deal. Can you give it to me privately? Dad, how many times have I told you not to do such things? Our Spade doesn't like it. I'm on the official Weibo now and there will be opportunities to interact with our Big Spade in the future. Don't go through the back door, it's unfair to the other Spade fans. Feng Yi could hear the crisp female voice over the phone. She chuckled. Your daughter is very sensible. President Lu. Was he implying that he was immature? Damn it, he loved his daughter so much that he couldn't even get her an autograph. Dad, tell Uncle Feng that there's no need. Boss Lu smiled bitterly. Brother Feng, you heard it. Feng Yi. I only heard her call him uncle. How am I an uncle? I'm so young. I heard you. Feng Yi wasn't very willing to say these 3 words. Chapter 783. Every single person who had accompanied Supreme Alliance to this day. Something that had never been extinguished in the depths of their hearts. Supreme Alliance would definitely win. All right. Little cutie, if you confess, young Master Qin will definitely freeze you with his cold eyes. How should I put it? You should just bear with it. After hanging up such a positive phone call, Zhang Zian was stunned. Feng Yi didn't forget to look for the culprit. He called 2 times but no one picked up. Feng Yi inhaled deeply. He didn't call the 3rd time, instead, sending a WeChat message. I don't believe you can sleep peacefully with Little Spade by your side. I know you aren't sleeping. Boss Qin, Almighty Qin, please pick up the phone. Qin Mo successfully saw through Feng Yi's resentment towards him in this message. He raised his hand slowly, picking up the 3rd call. What's the matter? His tone was nonchalant, as though he hadn't done anything. It isn't appropriate for you to send such a photo with such a caption. It isn't acceptable in the country, Feng Yi reminded him. Qin Mo asked, if you can't stand it, will you go crazy when I tell everyone that she really belongs to me? Feng Yi inhaled deeply. I'm not the one going crazy, the fans are. Boss Qin, Almighty Qin, even if you want to cause trouble, you have to take it easy. And what did he mean by she really belongs to me? Feng Yi felt the need to remind him again. Little Spade isn't of age yet. Don't worry, I won't do anything to her for now. I'm hanging up. Feng Yi glanced at the screen. Do? Did Boss Qin use the word do just now? Why did Little Spade seem even more dangerous after hearing it? Qin Mo did have the intention to do that to the person in front of him. But it wasn't perfect. She hadn't even taken the initiative to sit on his waist. How could it be perfect? Qin Mo reached out, his fingers sliding over the youngster's wrist. Then he held onto it, his lips curving upwards. He purposely lowered the temperature of the heater. It was cold on a rainy day and humans had an innate need for warmth. After a short while, Bojiu leaned over, automatically searching for a source of warmth. Qin Mo reached out his other hand and placed it on the other side of the youngster's head. He closed his eyes in an absolutely possessive position. Sooner or later, he would deal with this fellow. Bojiu didn't know anything but her body's memory was still there. Hence, when she woke up the next morning, her ears were red. He glanced at the Almighty, who was sleeping beside him, and jumped off the bed. After entering the bathroom, the first thing he did was to wash his face. Then, he checked his pajamas. Other than being a little messy, everything else was normal. Then why did she have such a dream? Bojiu looked at her own face in the mirror and flicked the stray silver hair that was stuck to her ear. It was the kind of numbness that rose from his tailbone when he was half asleep and half awake. She felt that the Almighty had touched her somewhere. Bojiu frowned. Or had she been dreaming? Had she automatically seen the Almighty's face? It was just a feeling. Have this dream. Bojiu's face heated up. She poured herself some cold water and placed both hands on the basin. That action was very handsome. Some men wouldn't be able to do it, but the youngster was the one who did it. It made her look tough. Qin Mo leaned against the bathroom door, his thin lips curved into a faint smile. Then he walked over slowly. Bojiu stilled. It was probably because the person in her dream had become the Almighty. Now that she saw that handsome and elegant face, she felt a chill run down her spine. Chapter 784. It was a subtle sense of guilt. Bojiu shifted her gaze to the left. But she never would have thought that the Almighty's first action after waking up would be to take off her pants. Brother Mo? Bojiu arched a brow. She took a swift step back, her movements beautiful. Qin Mo stuffed a hand into his pocket, his side profile perfect, his voice faint. Why are you reacting so strongly? Didn't you pee in the morning? What did he mean by throwing the match? Every man understood. Bojiu understood as well. The last thing she should have done was to say, good brothers should throw the game together, during their first gay meetup with the Almighty. Back then, Bojiu hadn't expected the Almighty to use such a rule on her. He had used it every single time. I've already done it. Brother Mo, you can pee yourself, I'll head down to see what Madame Zhang has prepared. Usually, the Almighty would let her go at such a time. This time. Bojiu watched as the man raised his arm, blocking her way. Let's go together after I'm done. His request. Bojiu wanted to reject him. On the other side, Qin Mo had already unzipped his pants, his long and slender hands looking fairer than ever. The previous dream had caused Bojiu to freeze in place, the temperature on her face rising. This was different from when she had worked on the variety show. Back then, she hadn't really taken advantage of the Almighty. In order to prevent the dream from happening again, Bojiu's gaze remained fixed, the heat on the tip of her ears never subsiding. When he lowered his lids, Qin Mo's thin lips curved upwards, his deep gaze filled with a smile. If Feng Yi had known about this, he would definitely say, shameless. Brother Mo, did I do anything to you last night? It was probably because of the awkward atmosphere. Bojiu felt that she had to say something. When Qin Mo heard her question, the smile in his eyes deepened. What did she do to him? Swoosh. He pulled up his pants. Qin Mo tilted his head, his entire body relaxed but his thick brows were furrowed. Why are you rubbing against me? Did you dream about something last night? Bo Jiao didn't reply. What should she say? That kind of dream? Fortunately, the Almighty didn't continue asking. Instead, he changed the topic. Did you brush your teeth? Yes. Bo Jiao was still wondering how she had managed to get close to the Almighty. It was a little dangerous since he was gay. Even though she was the one taking advantage of him, he was someone who had confessed to her. Let me check. Inspection? Bo Jiao lifted her head. His chin was lifted up by someone. Then came a kiss that tasted of lemon toothpaste. When the coolness fell on his lips, Bo Jiao was in a daze, her dark eyes trembling. Looks like he did. Qin Mo retracted his hand and looked at the person in front of him with a smile. All right, the examination is done. Let's go downstairs for dinner. Other than the Almighty, there was no one else who could speak so naturally. Bo Jiao, what kind of inspection was this? But it was all in the past. It would be a little pretentious to talk about it again. Bo Jiao had no choice but to grab Princess, who had witnessed everything from the side, and give him a good beating. The princess was also shocked. The first thing it did after waking up was to protect its master. But just now, his master had kissed this brat's lips. What was going on? Don't bully a cat for not being able to understand. That was clearly a kiss. Chapter 785. Madame Zhang had been tiptoeing ever since she had finished preparing breakfast, glancing towards the second floor. Her young master's reaction yesterday had been too strange. She was afraid something might have happened. But when she saw Qin Mo in his pure black uniform, walking down with a bag in one hand, Madame Zhang felt that she was overthinking. Her young master hadn't been in such a good mood in a long time. Even when he was eating his porridge, he seemed to have thought of something, lifting his lips. But that smile came too quickly. It was gone by the time young Master Jiao came down. Madame Zhang walked over, holding the uniform that Bo Jiao had taken off yesterday. Young Master Jiao, you can't wear young master's uniform, it's too big. Fortunately, I washed this one for you, hurry and change into it, you can leave with young master later. Bo Jiao glanced at the Almighty, who was still eating breakfast, and thanked Madame Zhang with a smile. She took the uniform and headed back upstairs. This morning was destined to be different for Supreme Alliance. In the East District, Shui Yaoyao lifted her lids and glanced at herself in the mirror. No one was willing to be ordinary. It was the same for her. The finals of the National League. The day had finally arrived. She pushed the door open. She was surprised to see two people standing under the jujube tree. One of them had a cigarette in his mouth while the other stuttered, it's here, I remember the address. Yin Guiyao glanced up, flicking the cigarette. It's indeed here, Yao Yao is behind you. Ah. Feng Shang turned around and smiled. His tender face was radiant. Yao Yao, why you don't know how he bullied me when I slept with uncle yesterday. Yin Guiyao stopped smoking when he heard that. Feng Shang, speak properly. Bully. F***ck, I'm the only straight man in the entire Supreme Alliance, don't mess up my image. She saw her teammates early in the morning. She was touched. It made Shui Yaoyao forget all her nervousness. Let's go, Manager Feng will drive us to the venue personally. That day. In Jiang City, the morning fog was still thick. Even the car windows were foggy. But it was also the most unforgettable day for Shui Yaoyao. Even a long, long time later, when she retired from esports and fell asleep with her child in her arms, she could still remember the speed of her heartbeat. Very soon. Soon, whoosh. The youngster zipped up his uniform. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. He stood with his back to the light, his legs long and slender, his back straight. His eyes watched the rising arc of the sun. Subsequently, the young man slowly walked into the darkness and pulled on the black wrist guard on his left hand. His combat uniform fluttered in the wind, and he looked very handsome. Even the princess couldn't help but complain about his aura. Chin Mo stood downstairs, waiting for a certain someone. He had a shoulder bag on his shoulder. His tall figure was elegant and noble. Feng Yi's driving skills weren't bad, and it wasn't a problem for him to drive a business car. What's more, this commercial vehicle had been recorded by the compound, so it wasn't difficult to get in. All he had to do was sign. However, there was one thing that he had overlooked. Usually, it was the chauffeur who drove, and this car could fit all the passengers. Now that he had taken the driver's seat, there was one more person. When everyone, including Chin Mo, realized this, the atmosphere froze. But Chin Mo quickly opened his mouth, his tone calm. "No need, let someone sit on my lap." Chapter 786. The moment he said that, almost everyone stilled. Especially the driver who had been snatched away from him. That someone definitely wasn't referring to him. Who else would dare to sit on their captain's lap? Lin Feng opened the bottle of mineral water, pretending to drink it. Yun Hu lifted his lids and glanced over. Yin Weo's hand was scalded by the cigarette ash that fell. Feng Shang and Coco bit on a rabbit's ear each, their eyes widening. Feng Yi gripped the steering wheel and glared at Almighty Qin. Almighty Qin's shamelessness had reached a point where it made one's hair stand on end. He really didn't think that the young master he brought along, who was always indifferent to everything, would become like this once he fell in love with someone. Shameless, too shameless. Sit on his lap. Chin Mo didn't seem to care about how Feng Yi looked at him. It should be said that from the start, his deep gaze had been on the youngster. His expression was cold, as though saying, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take a seat." Of course, Bojio realized that the someone he was referring to was her, but did she need to sit on his lap? The driver hurriedly said, "Boss Chin, I'll alight, I'll just alight." Chin Mo swept the driver a glance. "If you leave, who's going to park the car? Are you going to let the vice president of a club park the car? Feng Yi is already accompanying others in the industry. If he's going to be a parking boy, how is the Qin group going to maintain its image?" Feng Yi. "Wait a minute, explain yourself. What do you mean by accompanying others in the industry? How could a popular manager like him be described in such a manner?" "Almighty Qin, just say that you want little Spade to sit on your lap. Why are you insulting me?" However, Old Fox Feng was still Old Fox Feng. He completely understood what his boss was thinking, and he would go along with it. After all, there was a tough battle to be fought in a while. If he made young Master Qin happy, he might even smile during the game's live stream and increase the number of online viewers. Hence, Foxy Feng lifted his thin lips. "Little Spade, let's squeeze. Fortunately, the first match is in Jiang City, it won't take long. Hurry up and get on." Bojio glanced at the other 3 cars in the Qin family's house. One was a limited edition sports car, one was a military Land Rover, and one was a normal sedan. Before Bojio could finish her sentence, Qin Mo reached out and pulled her into the car. The Almighty's side profile was still so handsome and elegant that she couldn't bear to sully it. "Aren't you going to sit down? Are you going to take responsibility if I'm late?" It was not a big deal to sit down. After all, there was a lot of space in the MPV. However, all the members of the team still had expressions that said, "I'm looking at the sky, not you guys." Bojio felt herself being pressed against his long legs, the Almighty's enviable hand around her waist and his expression that threatened to throw her out of the car window if she said another word. From this angle, the Almighty was still handsome and inviolable. She was probably thinking too much. In other words, she had taken advantage of the Almighty and sat on his thighs. It was just that he had never tried such a close distance. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.